Good morning everybody, welcome to IndyCar Easter Special. I'm Gordon Ross, and on the show today I'll be looking at the running order of the BBC's news feed, which today has headings in Scotland's news, basically a whole series of murders, fatal car accidents, stabbings and sectarian violence. Oh, and as a little afterthought at the end, there's this small announcement that there might be another independence referendum coming up very soon, and that Nicola Sturgeon has actually now started to lay out the plans for that. So, the usual story with the BBC, everything in the news is murder and death. In fact, somebody years ago used to characterise the Scottish news in the evening as murder, 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 football, funny story, weather forecast, and that was it, and that was all you got. And actually nothing much has changed over the years with both BBC and ITV Scottish news feeds. It's all murder, 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 sectarian violence, stabbings, people being obese, people being drunk, people being drug addicted, basically the whole country sounding as though it's going to hell in a handbasket. But buried amongst all of that bad news, yesterday was an announcement from the First Minister that there is now going to be a roadmap to independence. And Nicola Sturgeon wrote a lengthy article where she explained in the National how the SNP was planning to present this new independence to the Scottish people, and what was going to happen at the next SNP conference. Now, I read it quite thoroughly, and I'm sure a lot of you have had a read at what Nicola Sturgeon had written. But what struck me as interesting was that we've all been moaning and whining about the fact that the SNP appeared to be basing most of its decisions on the so-called Growth Commission report. Now, this Growth Commission report was deliberately set up by the SNP to look at the hard facts of independence, not a fantasy, not a utopia, but how do you actually become independent, and what do you do about currency, and what do you do about a central bank? How do you switch over from using British pounds to using the Scottish currency? All of these things needed to be addressed, and they are addressed in this long article. The first thing to say, from my point of view, having criticised the SNP for not putting out information which, shall we say, scotched all the conspiracy theories, this now does go some way towards ending the conspiracy theories and the speculation about the SNP having somehow been nobbled by the British state. But they really have pushed it to the wire, and people were on the brink of walking away from the SNP until now. But now we know a lot of things that we didn't know last week. For example, the Growth Commission report is not the blueprint for independence. It shows a variety of different choices that could be taken if the people of Scotland wanted them to be taken, and if the SNP conference decided that those should be offered to the public as part of the new independence settlement. But none of it is fixed in stone. And the interesting thing for me was the fact that Nicola came out and actually said this, that the Scottish National Party's independence programme, its route map to independence, did not necessarily abide by the Growth Commission report, that this was not the way that the SNP were recommending things be done. It just looked at a variety of options, from what I would have called the worst case scenario, in other words, managing Scotland as if it was a part of the United Kingdom, and as if it was still being run by Tories, and as if it was still requiring to pay back enormous debts, and because of that needed austerity. But as Nicola has pointed out in this piece, Scotland will be starting with a clean slate, and as a new country it owes no debt, almost nothing at all, and in fact is not under any obligation whatsoever to repay any debts that were taken out by the British government, because, well, quite frankly, the British government was borrowing for the UK. Scotland is not going to be part of the UK, and therefore has no compunction. There is no, you cannot be compelled to pay back somebody else's debt that they took out, that they decided to take out. Nicola did say, which I find rather curious, that repayment or servicing of the debt might be something that an independent Scotland could do if it wanted to, but only as part of a negotiation over assets and the percentage of assets which belong to Scotland when it comes to negotiating the settlement with England. I find that slightly curious that you would accept that you might want to pay or service some of the debt interest of another country in exchange for getting back something which already actually belongs to you. Anyway, I'm going to leave that aside for the moment. But what was interesting for me was the fact that it appears at least that the First Minister has been listening to the conspiracy theorists and has been listening to everybody who's been saying it is time now to set out the way to independence. Whether it happens this year, next year or the year after, I don't think that matters as much anymore. I think what matters is what we are, what we want to happen and how we see independence developing as things go by. Now, I've been a strong proponent for a number of years of a Scottish constitution, and I notice that that is strangely absent from Nicola's plan at the moment, although it might be something that they're planning to do later on, but I didn't hear much mention of it in this article. What I did hear a lot of was a new Scottish currency. Now, this is the first time the SNP has come out with a bold and positive statement that says we do believe now, or we are going to debate this, and if it goes ahead we will be having a Scottish currency. The question about the Scottish currency that's being asked at the moment is, what currency do we use in the interim between where we are now and becoming fully independent? Do we just continue to use the pound for years and years and years, like Ireland did for almost 50 years? And in Ireland's case, being a part of the British pound was almost disastrous because they had no control over their interest rates at all, and using the British pound actually made Ireland a lot poorer and made London a lot wealthier. When Ireland dropped the pound, ironically, Dublin and the south became far more prosperous, and the north, by contrast, became the poor man of Ireland. So there is, as you can see from previous experience of Ireland, there are disadvantages to hanging on to the pound for too long. However, I noticed that the SNP has stated quite clearly that they don't anticipate using the British pound for longer than the first term of a new independent Scottish government. So that means within 5 years the pound will be dropped and the new Scottish currency will then be used. It is a good idea, in my view at least, to hang on to the pound for a short period of time, because we need to reassure people that the money that's in their pockets, the cash that's in their bank accounts, is not going to lose its value because of independence. And that when we do switch to a new Scottish pound, or whatever we want to call it, that the money that's in these bank accounts and in those pockets is actually worth more than it was when it was a British pound. And we can ensure that that happens. I noted that the First Minister was very confident that the Scottish Central Bank could be set up fairly swiftly, and because other agencies such as the Benefits Agency and the Tax Office have already been set up as part of the Smith Commission, that really only leaves the Central Bank as the one last big institution that still remains to be created. And having created other things like an investment bank recently, the SNP now has a lot of experience of creating these new institutions. All of this is good news. But it struck me actually when I was reading this that the SNP has been listening much more intently to what we've been saying on social media than we imagined. They just haven't been acknowledging it. But what's coming out in this article of Nicola's about the way forward to independence, how the SNP wants to proceed, is evidence that they have been listening, because they have said that they don't want to hang on to the pound too long. They don't really want to hang on to the pound at all, I don't think, if possible. If we could change overnight, it would be wonderful, but it's not practical to do it, and we have to accept that there will be a change over time. Something which Mark McNaught had built into his constitution was a period of approximately 18 months, during which the laws of Scotland and the laws of the European Union were amalgamated together to create a new body of Scottish law. And that period of time, he estimated, would be what was needed to politically demerge Scotland from England and to remerge it with the EU so that we are completely compliant and therefore able to rejoin the European Union almost immediately if we wish, or to maybe join the European Free Trade group. Instead, there are always ways of dealing with Europe that don't necessarily need full membership. However, the constitutional issue is touched upon very briefly in Nicola's article, and there is another constitutional document prepared by Commonweal, which I haven't seen. I've seen some excerpts from it, and I don't know whether it's finished yet. But my guess is that both the Commonweal Constitution, a previous constitution which was very basic, which was written by other people, plus Mark McNaught's vast constitution with all of its detail, those can all be put together into one constitutional pot, and the whole thing can be debated in Holyrood at any point, and we can decide upon a version of, say, Mark's constitution merged with some of the Commonweal's ideas. Where there is commonality, we can basically merge them together. So there is a lot going for this. It also means that the SNP is going to finally decide what the currency is going to be, when and how long we're going to hang on to the pound for. And I like that. I like the idea that they're doing that. I don't want to go into too much detail on Nicola's article. It's best if you read it for yourself in the National, and I'm sure it's available online to read. But one of the things I noticed, it was being called a roadmap to independence. Now, if the SNP is creating a roadmap, that means they're plotting the path towards independence. But they aren't telling us what vehicle we're going to be travelling in to get there. That has not been decided yet. And by the vehicle, what I'm talking about is how do we vote to become independent? What is the method that we use which is acceptable to other countries in the United Nations, the European Union, and across the globe? Whatever we do and however we vote for this independence, we have to be accepted as a new independent state by our near neighbours so that we can continue to trade and so that we have the political offices that we need to continue with trade and with diplomacy and with our involvement in the international community. So there is a lot that still hasn't been revealed yet, and I'm sure it will be later, but it can't be revealed right now because, as we know, the SNP is playing a very difficult game against a very deceitful and sly opponent in the UK. The UK has its own troubles at the moment, as we know, with Brexit. The new Brexit party, started by Nigel Farage, is more popular amongst Tory voters than the Tory party is. And that tells you, if anything, that I think there is a hardening of opinion that Brexit must go ahead from an English viewpoint. And if that's the imperative at the moment, and we're still seeing Brexit as the problem, we're still seeing no-deal Brexit preparations continuing, we're still hearing that Jean-Claude Juncker has said that he still believes that there is a possibility of a no-deal Brexit. Nothing is off the table at the moment, nothing's been ruled out. So in light of all of that, the SNP cannot really wait any longer. They have to lay out the roadmap to independence regardless, because if we remain chained to Brexit, then we are always a hostage to English fortunes. And if you want to separate your country from one that's failing, then the last thing you want to do is be doing it on their timescale. You want to do it on your own most beneficial timescale. One last thing today, I want you to remember this. Nicola Sturgeon said very clearly, during this article, she said very clearly and stated it plainly that she now can see that there is a majority of voters in Scotland in favour of independence. She has never said that before. She was never convinced of it before. But now she says there is a majority. And if that is coming from the First Minister, from the leader of the SNP, then you can guarantee that they have done a lot of private polling recently, and they are showing a substantial lead in the yes movement, if you like. So we have strengthened our position. Every day I'm seeing people writing in on Facebook saying that lifetime no voters that they know, who are friends of theirs, have suddenly decided that's it, they've had enough of being in the UK, and they now feel that they made a mistake by voting no, and they're now definitely going to vote for independence if there's another referendum. And the fact that these stories are becoming more and more common, more of them every single day, we never used to hear this before. Now we're hearing it. These anecdotal stories of friends who we thought would never change their minds now coming around. So I'll leave you on this Easter day with hope, which is what Easter is about. It's about hope, it's about renewal, it's about rebirth, it's about life after death. And we're talking about the life of Scotland after the death of the United Kingdom. That's about it from me today, but it's good news all around. I'm waiting with great anticipation to hear the final details coming out of the SNP conference, which will be happening just in a few weeks. I believe it's May. I'll check the date. I never can remember dates, you know what I'm like. But with the SNP conference coming up, I think we're all looking forward to hearing exactly how the independence journey is going to continue and how fast it is going to be and by what means we get there. What is the vehicle that's going to take us from where we are trapped in this sinking union to the freedom to do what we want to do with our own country and our own resources. So that's it for today. Happy Easter, everybody. But remember, we are now the majority, okay? And that's come from the First Minister. And I think if she believes it, then you can probably take that to the bank. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you again on Monday. Bye-bye for now.